for the work session, correct? Not the executive session.
Correct.
While we are conducting town business using remote participation via Zoom, we ask that those of you not recognized by the chair or otherwise engaged in the discussion of the moment to please mute your microphone to avoid interruptions outside the conversation. Thank you. So I will start with minutes. Do we have a motion for the October 15th meeting?
I motion to approve the minutes of the October 15th meeting of the Board of the Select Board.
Is there a second?
October 15th, 2020 of the Select Board.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? We'll go for a roll call. Boyd?
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
And Lynn, aye. Passes unanimously. Could I have a motion for the October 19th minutes?
I motion to approve the Select Board meeting minutes of October 19th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? Move to a roll call vote. Boyd?
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
And Lynn, aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move to the Traffic Advisory Committee update. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to do an intro and then pass it to Chief?
Yeah, thanks. So just want to give everybody an update on how things are progressing with that. We have 2 open positions on the Traffic Advisory Committee, which will be specifically for residents. And we've opened it up through the website and other means to receive applicants. We have 4 currently, which Chief and I are looking to meet with them. And then in line with our appointment guidelines that were produced a year ago, the Chief and I will consult and make a recommendation on the 2 to the board at an upcoming meeting. Just wanted to, at this point in the work session, just wanted to keep you all posted on where we were and answer any questions. Chief, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, as you indicated, we have 4 qualified applicants. They come from a vast background. So it's nice to see that we do have some choices here, and there is some interest. So I think it's important, as the town administrator stated, that we sit down with these people and have at a minimal a phone conversation with them, if not a Zoom meeting with them, and then we can make a sound, educated recommendation back to the board, back to the select board.
So the next select board meeting is the 16th. I'm assuming that might be too quick to talk with all 4 and have a recommendation.
Kevin's absence, that would be too quick. We're looking for a 2-week extension and coming back on December 7th. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any questions?
It's not slowing down our process because the fire chief and the town administrator have been integrally involved, as well as Superintendent Gary Wilds. If we have something that is pressing, we discuss it, and then we would come back to you anyway. So the whole process is not being slowed down, and I don't want anybody to think that we're not meeting and we're not discussing any issues or concerns or safety concerns. So all that is still being addressed. We're just trying to finish this last piece of formulating this, 7-person committee.
Do you anticipate the camp meeting might be one of the first things the group undertakes, Chief?
I think camp meeting is, we've got a lot of accolades. I know there was a concern from one resident at 235 or whatever, Ipswich Road. I've been down there numerous times during the day. I don't think the complaint is legitimate because of the lighting coming into his house, but I have viewed that on numerous occasions. So that is not the number one concern. I think the extension of Averill Street is one of the first pieces they're going to take up, and Wenham Road is probably I would probably say would outweigh, from my perspective, from a public safety concern, in the number of complaints and the number of residents that have reached out to me in the last few weeks. That is probably the biggest concern right now. So the first 2 agenda items would be those 2 streets that I would take up and make a recommendation for that some action be taken.
What was the concern on Wenham, Chief?
So the speed limit starts off at 30 miles an hour, then drops down to 20. It's extremely narrow. A lot of people are home during this pandemic, so there's a lot more foot traffic. People walking their dogs, their children. There's a huge. It's become a very busy cut through for trucks going over to Wenham and Beverly. There's a lot of concerns about the volume of traffic, the speeds. We've done some measurements. It's amazing. If you ever drove down there, I can't imagine somebody driving plus 60 miles an hour. And we've had 2 occasions where we have documented that cars are exceeding 60 miles an hour in a 20 mile an hour zone. So the volume, the size of the vehicles, and the speed. I have enforcements out there every single day looking at this because I'm really concerned with that stretch of roadway.
60 on Wenham Road?
Yes.
They're insane.
Yes, I honestly don't know how they even did it. I've gone through EVOC and I don't think I could maneuver 60 on that road. So,
and I would just also mention too, the chiefs put the technology out on Wenham Road as well as some other roads to track some data around vehicle volume and speed. So we have some good data that we can bring to the table with the group once the group is ready to meet on it. So really interesting too. I mentioned there's some, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but I think it was about 26,000 vehicles in a 1 week period that went through the downtown in Topsfield the week after when the Topsfield Fair would have happened. So about mid-October, significant number, up about 5,000 vehicle traffic count from a year prior. So there's some really good technology that's going to go along with some of these conversations as well.
Chief, in the case of Wenham Road, the speed limit now is, you mentioned 30. I
So it starts up.
That's an advisory speed that's posted, correct? The actual speed limit based on the state would be 40 miles an hour. Is that correct?
On Wenham Road, the houses are closer in a lot of areas, so probably the realistic speed, if the state came out, would be 30. If you enter Wenham Road through Salem, that the first stretch up to number 18 is posted 30 miles an hour, and then it drops down about 100 yards further up around number 42. It drops down to 20 miles an hour and goes 20 miles an hour all the way up to Sleepy Hollow. So that road is predominantly 20 miles an hour.
I'll have a chance to talk with you about that.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions for Chief? No? All right. Well, thank you for that update. We look forward to your recommendation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chief.
The next item is the pandemic response nurse. Kevin, do you want to give us an update on that?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. So about a month ago, I was approached by Wendy, our health agent, and she notified me that there was a conversation between the health agents in Middleton, Boxford, and herself around bringing on a pandemic nurse, specifically to help us with COVID-related contact tracing, information pushing, things that related to, obviously, to the pandemic and COVID-19. Sorry. The conversation started with trying to move it, expediting it. I honestly, I raised my hand and said, wait, we don't have any type of MOA. We don't have really an understanding of how we're going to fund this if we did go forward. And so we had a good conversation, sort of a summit between the 3 town administrators and the 3 health agents about what the expectation was, what need they'd be filling, and how we go about doing this. And some of the operational concerns I had was, originally the thought was to hire somebody as an employee. I think personally the better approach would be hire someone through an agency. So we're not looking at unemployment when their stint's over or anything like that. There's more safeguards. It could be a cleaner termination when the period ends. The second part that we talked about was funding of it. It is eligible for CARES funding, which, as we all know, expires at the end of this calendar year. So then the conversation was, if we committed through the end of the calendar year, how do we fund it thereafter? And one thing that we're looking at is FEMA funds, which would cover 75% of the cost if we decided to move forward. However, I made it clear that we all need to have an out at the end of the calendar year, where if we're going to put any town money into this, we got to make sure we have a conversation and then have the ability to opt out if we decide to do so. What's before you is similar to the school resource officer. I actually took the SRO document and tweaked it so that it would cover the pandemic nurse, and circulated that with the other town administrators, who feedback was it's fine. They didn't have any edits to it. So the next step is I wanted to present it to the select board in a work session, discuss answer any questions around what the concept is and what is looking to be done, and then look specifically at the MOA itself and see if there's anything of concern or anything that we want to consider doing differently. So with that being said, I think you all seen it through the board docs, the document we're working off of. I just explained a little bit of what the genesis of this was. And I will mention too, Dan from Middleton's really been championing this. He's the health agent there. He was here when the swine flu, H1N1, was in the midst of the communities, and they had a joint effort at that time where they hired somebody to help as they're looking to do with this pandemic. So apparently it was a very successful process, and they're trying to mirror that this time, I think, I'd say with some additional safeguards in place for the town's best interest as well.
The concepts
I didn't have
pretty clear. I don't think there's an issue at all with the concepts. It's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and as you point out, until December 31st, it's CARES funds that's helping us out with that. And then this out after that, 14-day out for any one particular community. But that means in the next few weeks here, we have to figure out, if we're going to do that, how we're going to fund it after. I have some comments on the texting. Just as an example, it talks about unless one or both, we would change to one or more parties, that sort of thing. So I have some inputs of that nature that you may want to look at after this meeting.
Kevin, I just had a question on the dollar amount. I see there's no dollar amount in there. Is there any max because of how we know we're spending the other CARES funds? Is there some dollar amount we don't want to exceed?
Yeah, so there was an estimate. I think it cost, we estimated through November and December for each community would be a max of about $6,000 exposure, so $3,000 a month potentially. And so the CARES funds, we're more than confident will take care of that in its entirety. We have enough money in our budget. We're spending all of our money from the CARES, but we've put in there a line item for this if we need to. If this does go forward, that would allow us to do it within our budgetary amount of $584,000. So it's a little bit of a floating number because the other communities are researching the contracted service approach versus employee. How many hours? They're talking full time. I'm not sure if full time makes all the sense in the world to start with. I think we ramp it up, if anything, as needed, rather than starting with a full 40 hours or 35 hours a week. Maybe it's halftime and then forward from there. There are some tweaks like that we're going to be working out. But my role, if we move forward with this, would be to make sure that the town of Topsfield is, from both a public health standpoint, weighing that against any financial exposures that the town will have as well. So that's. I don't have a great answer for that, Lynn. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Is this one of them like Masco where two out of the three vote and it rules, so that if you signed this and they decided to go full time, and you're like, I really don't think we should go full time, it goes forward with 2 out of 3, or do you need all 3?
All 3.
So we would, yeah. So
it says after 14 days, any party can cause the other parties to not do it.
After the 14 days, yes. I'm pertaining to the dollar amount. If they decided to do full-time, and Kevin's like, I really don't want to go full-time. If we sign this and that hasn't been addressed, I just didn't know how that gets resolved. Does it take agreement from the 3 towns on the approach?
I wouldn't play hardball with them because we worked very well with Middleton and Boxford, and I think we have a good understanding of what the expectations are with this. I think if they came in saying we want 40, talking with Wendy and my opinion and any feedback from the board, I said, no, I think 20 hours is the right, I would draw a pretty hard line in the sand if I'm pretty adamant about that, at least to start with. And so far, every conversation we've had where I've brought up things that I thought were concerning both TAs and the health agents have worked to move in that direction. So I don't think it's been a very collaborative process, let's put it that way.
I'll just mention for the viewing audience, if they can't hear your daughter, you're not turning and telling me to be quiet all the time. That's what it looks like on here. Like you keep pointing at me and telling me to be quiet.
Get out of the image, but you can get out without.
You mentioned $2,000. That was for the 3 towns or for each town?
$3,000, right? $6,000 total, $3,000 a month.
It was $6,000. $6,000 on a monthly based on their estimated per hour cost at full time. So if you look at, I think it was $6,000. On a monthly basis, and then we would have
2,000 for us.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thank you. I mean, that makes sense. It's 72,000 a year, whatever. That's pretty good if it's fully burdened, whatever. But there's always the question, as you point out, is it full time, is it part time, et cetera. But order of magnitude, we have an idea of how many dollars it represents. Is there any sense that the Board of Health feels that they have a budget for this?
I know that their budget's pretty tight. We're already looking at the deceased animal removal and trying to manage that successfully. And so that's a major line item in the health budget already that we know we're trying to manage that line item specifically. So I could say that probably wouldn't be the place to look for additional funds to cover the cost. It would probably have to be FEMA, and then the 25%, we'd have to book it to the right account number, but we'd have to identify a place where there's other savings that we could do a transfer at STM.
Are we having more dead animals than we thought, Kevin?
It's a challenge, and I wouldn't say it. I don't know if more. It's just we put a number on there with some of our best estimates on what we expected for dead animals, the number of deer, big, larger ones versus the smaller ones. And there's limitations on what we'll hire out through the excavating company we're contracted with, and some smaller ones. And so we're still trying to find our way a little bit on we know our protocol, but just finding our way on, as a beaver that's deceased in front of Stewart School, does that need to be removed right away or not? Yes, that's something we'll take care of. We don't want the kids riding in on the bus, and but that might be something that's underneath the threshold for the weight. So it's a little bit of a moving target, but we're learning through the course of the different seasons when we actually have higher numbers of deceased animals at different times during the year, sort of what to expect, and we're just keeping a very close eye on it.
Some weighty issues. Okay, any other comments or feedback besides what Dick will give to Kevin offline, some of the wording suggestions? No?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Great. All right, thank you, Kevin. It looks like then, unless there's anything else anyone wants to raise, we'll move into executive session. Kevin?
Could I just say, we have the subject
sorry,
of employee wage scale, and it says it'll be moved to a different time. Things are moving pretty fast, of course, with budgets in that. When do we hope to bring this up again? Do we have a date, so to speak?
Yeah, so my there's two things that I was hoping to accomplish at this meeting. One was to discuss preliminary capital items, and two was wage scale. My intent was to be able this past week to talk to every employee about sort of what the direction we're looking at based on conversations with the FinCom and economic predictors of what we're looking at doing. I did not obviously have that chance. So I felt strongly I want to talk with the team first before a public conversation. My hope is that we can I talked with Chairman Spencer on this too. My hope is that over the next couple of weeks, we might be able to schedule a special work session where we can do just those two things, capital and wage scale.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And next few weeks. Thank you. Okay.
Anything else? No? Okay. Dick, do you want to motion?
Sure. By roll call vote of the board the board will enter into closed executive session in accordance with MGL 30 Alpha 21 Alpha under the exemption 3 discussion strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. An open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating positions of the public body, and the chair so declares. The board will not return to regular open session, and the subject of this will be the Reserve Police negotiations, MOA, and update of.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call. Boyd?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
And Lynn, aye. It passes unanimously. We are now in executive session. Let me start